Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Chapter number 20, the condemnation of the one who worships Allah at the grave of a righteous man, and how then does this amount to worship of the man.
Bismillah, innal hamdalillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. Man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlilhu fala hadiya lahu. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. The last chapter that we discussed was concerning what? Over-exaggerating the status of a righteous or a pious person. Now this is the next step, or a very related topic, and that is that he who worships Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the way, the chapter title translation is incorrect. It is translated in your book as the condemnation, or actually the actual title, I'll read it for you in Arabic. ما جاء من التغليظ في من عبد الله عند قبر رجل صالح. Basically, what has been narrated concerning the prohibition or the condemnation of he who worships Allah at the grave of a righteous person. And then the author says, فَكَيْفَ إِذَا عَبَدَهُ. Then how much greater will the sin be if he actually worships that righteous person? So the correct translation is, that which has been narrated concerning the condemnation of he who worships Allah at the grave of a righteous man. So how much greater would the sin be if he worships that man? So basically this chapter we're talking about someone who is not worshipping the grave. He is worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is worshipping his creator. But the problem is that he is worshipping his creator at a grave. So he is using that grave as a means or as a place to worship Allah, not the grave. And even this has been extremely forbidden and disliked and actually cursed, as we shall read on soon. So the point is that the author is saying that even those that worship Allah at a grave are cursed. So how much greater the sin, how much greater the evil if they actually worship the person in that grave. And obviously this is a related chapter from the one before it. The one before it was basically exaggerating the status of the pious people, and one of the manifestations or one of the aspects of exaggerating the status of a pious person is that you take his grave as a place of barakah, of obtaining more blessings. Okay? So if you were to even worship Allah at his grave, you're not worshipping the grave. If even you were to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at his grave, thinking that that place is a better place for you to worship Allah in, then this too is an act that has been condemned in the Quran and the Sunnah. Naam.
In the Sahih, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha reported, Salama mentioned to Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam that in Abyssinia she saw a church full of pictures and statues. He sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, when a righteous man or pious worshipper among them dies, they build a place of worship over his grave and set up all kinds of pictures and statues. They are the worst of all creatures before Allah. They combine the two evils, worshipping at the graves and making graven images and statues.
Okay, this last phrase that the author translates as they combine the two evils, worshipping at the graves and making graven images and statues. Important note, this is not a part of the hadith. The translator made a mistake. This is not a part of the hadith. The hadith finishes at the phrase, they are the worst of Allah's creation. Very important. Mark this in your books. This is a big mistake. The remaining portion of this sentence is from the author. And unfortunately the translators did not point that out. The author says that, so these people, they combined two evils. The evil of worshipping, or the evil of graves, and the evil of pictures. This sentence is not a part of the hadith. Please note that in your books. Now, so this is the first hadith that we take in this chapter. Salama is one of the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she was of those that immigrated to Abyssinia. You know that in the time of Mecca, during the Meccan period, some Muslims, they immigrated to Abyssinia, or modern-day Ethiopia. Okay, they immigrated there because there was a pious and just king there that would allow them to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Salama is describing these churches that she saw in Abyssinia, because Abyssinia was a Christian country. And she said that, she was describing it as in a wondrous way, praising this, that she said that she saw churches and they had pictures of pious people, or they had pictures of their saints in these churches. So what did the Prophet ﷺ say? He described why they have these pictures. He said, these people, the Jews and the Christians, and this happens to our times amongst the Christians, these people, when a pious man amongst them dies, or he used to die, they would build a masjid. They would build a masjid on top of his grave. and they would make these pictures. They would draw these pictures of this pious man. Okay? Now what happens in our time? And why is it, especially amongst the Roman Catholics, they have so many saints, they have so many icons, they have so many people that they look up to and respect and revere. And all of these people, they are not prophets, they are saints, they are pious people. But what do? They draw their images in their churches and they put it in their places of worship. Okay? So the Prophet ﷺ is describing this, and it is exactly as he said. That whenever a pious man amongst them dies, they elevate him to the status of a saint. And then they draw this picture of the saint and they put it in their churches. Now what did the Prophet ﷺ say after that? He said, these are the worst of Allah's creation. These people are the worst of Allah's creation. And then the author explains in the last sentence, he said that these people, they combine two fitnas, or they combine two evils. Firstly, the evil of grave worship, in other words, that they built a masjid over the grave. Secondly, the evil of drawing pictures and showing reverence or worship to these pictures. Now the point is, why are these people the worst of Allah's creation? This is because they have done acts that lead to major shirk. Even though some of them might not be doing major shirk, in the sense they might not be worshipping that icon or that statue or that picture, but because of the fact that they built the place of worship over that person's grave, and because of the fact that they drew that image of that man and they placed it in that place of worship, in their masjid, this is the easiest way that will lead you to major shirk. This is one of the greatest aspects of major shirk. And in fact, in our times, the Roman Catholics in particular are the most apparent in their shirk of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You go to their churches and you find that they bow down to icons, actual idols of Mary and Jesus, and sometimes even saints, sometimes even people that are not even in their eyes prophets and quote-unquote sons of God. But the point is that they have done an act that is so close to major shirk that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has then caused them to be the worst of the creation. Because it is as if the act that they have done, it is as if it is major shirk. Because you have nothing left between this and major shirk except for your intention. Outwardly, it's the same thing. You have your icon, you are worshipping that icon, you have built the masjid on top of the grave, it is as if you are worshipping that grave. So the point is, this chapter title is about what? Worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at these places. These Christians, the early ones amongst them, they didn't used to worship these icons and images. But look at the Roman Catholics in our times. Look at this generation in our times. They don't make this differentiation. They actually sacrifice, they actually give their altars, they actually give their worship to these icons. Now.